This is the 90-90 hip lift with an active ball squeeze. What we're gonna do is get our feet on the wall. And ideally for most people, they're gonna have a shelf underneath them of some sort. So you could use something like this DC block, you could use a bench, you could use whatever you need to stack up, as long as you can still maintain your whole foot flat on the wall. That's gonna be the important part there, because we need foot contacts on the wall. Those foot contacts are the inner heel and the first metatarsal head on both sides evenly. That doesn't mean we lose the outside foot, that just means that's where our bias is. Now, we're also gonna have an object in between our knees. And this object needs to be a little bit compressible, so that way when we squeeze it, our knees very slightly move in. But we also don't want the object to be so large that in the starting position, our knees are outside of our hips, so they're wide like that. It should be, we're starting pretty in line with our feet and our hips. And now what we're gonna do, keeping our hands on our low ribs and our chin directly at the ceiling, we're going to do a little posterior pelvic tilt. And we're gonna do that by dragging our feet down into that shelf or down on that wall, but they're not obviously going to move. It's the intention of dragging our heels down, which is going to lift our tailbone off of the floor. And as we do that, we're going to feel our hamstrings engage on both sides relatively evenly. Our low back remains flat, so that's all we're feeling right now is hamstrings. After you have that, you're going to squeeze the ball. And for this, you're gonna squeeze it a decent bit. On a scale of 1 to 10, you're looking at about somewhere between a 5 to 7 out of 10. Not to the point where you're shaking or you're sweating, just enough to kind of feel your inner thigh muscles working on both sides. So make sure you don't lose your hamstrings when you get that squeeze. And then you're just going to inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, softly sigh all the air out. You're going to be very tempted to tense other things up in your body as you do this, such as your neck, such as your calves, such as your abs, but you want to make sure that nothing is engaging other than your hamstrings and your inner thigh muscles. The only exception to that could be a little bit of your side abs at the end of the exhale. But as long as you're isolating those muscles, you're doing a really good job. The most common mistake on this is people are going to lift their hips too high in the air, and that is not what we want. We want the tailbone to be slightly lifted off of the floor, but not the low back. So it's important that you just do a little bit of a tilt and then engage with the squeeze. Depending on you as an individual, you may want to add a little support underneath your neck, like a towel rolled up. Just make sure that it's only as thick to the point where you feel like your neck is supported and your chin is passively pointing straight up at the ceiling. You don't ever want to do this where it's so thick and it's tilted back or it's collapsing down. As a last resort, if you don't have a wall and a shelf you can put up against that wall, you could just put your feet on a bench or a chair, something stable, and drag down into that. It's not the most ideal thing ever, but it will certainly be better than nothing. Just make sure when you are doing this, it's just pretty much your heels digging down, maybe a little bit of your shin. You don't want the bench so close to where you're here. It's gonna make it harder for you to find your hamstrings and tuck genuinely.